The Cincinnati Bengals have one of the more fascinating off seasons in the NFL this year. Jamar Chase, they got to pay him. Trey Hendrickson, they got to pay him. And of course, the number one free agent, T. Higgins, is on the market as well. Can the Bengals afford all three of them and bring them back for another year, or will one of them be a catch? Let's break it all down right now. Let's start with T. Higgins and basically how we got here. So T. Higgins, obviously the second round pick in the 2020 NFL draft, directly after the first overall pick, Joe Burrow. So safe to say the Bengals nailed those two picks in the 2020 NFL draft. He's been extremely effective for the Bengals throughout his entire career. He's been one of the 15 most valuable receivers in the NFL, according to PFF's wins above replacement metric, in 3 of the last 4 years. He has 900 or more receiving yards in 4 of his 5 seasons in the NFL, and he was the 6th highest graded wide receiver in the league this past season. After his rookie contract expired after the 2023 season, the Bengals put the franchise tag on him. He reluctantly signed on it and played on it, and now, of course, he's the number one free agent heading into this offseason. But the Bengals, according to a lot of reports, might place the non-exclusive franchise tag on T. Higgins as they try to work out a long-term deal. So they placed a franchise tag on him last year. He played on that. They didn't get a long-term deal done. They are likely to do the non-exclusive tag this year. The non-exclusive tag is $26.2 million. And what it means for a non-exclusive franchise tag, other teams can still offer T. Higgins a contract offer. Now, the difference is the Bengals have an opportunity to match it. If they do not want to match it, the other team needs to send 2 first-round picks to the Bengals to sign T. Higgins. So it's highly unlikely that T. Higgins is going to get a massive offer from a team that the Bengals won't match and also trade away 2 first-round picks to the Bengals. So it's most likely T. Higgins will be a Bengal, at least through the franchise tag. Here's the problem, though. So you want to sign T. Higgins to a long-term deal. Like I said before, you got to sign Jamar Chase to a long-term deal and Trey Hendrickson to a long-term deal. Jamar Chase is heading into the last year of his rookie deal, and he was the Triple Crown winner for wide receivers. He led all receivers in the NFL in catches, in yards, and in touchdowns this past year. He likely is going to reset the market at over $35 million a year. That's right where Justin Jefferson, his former college teammate, is at right now from the Minnesota Vikings, making $35 million a year. Chase is probably going to break that. Trey Hendrickson led the league in sacks this past year at 17.5 sacks and the 5th best pass rushing grade in the NFL at 90.2. He'll likely command a deal near $30 million a year. He only has 1 year left on his deal as well, and he indicated that he wants to be paid. R.T. Higgins' projected contract, 4 years, $112 million, $67.5 million guaranteed. That would average about $28 million a year, which would be tied for 8th among all receivers in the NFL. The Bengals, going into the offseason, have $44.2 million in effective cap space. That's the 9th most in the NFL. Effective cap space is the cap space a team has after signing at least 51 players and all of the rookies in its upcoming rookie class as well. So the Bengals essentially have about $44 million to play with going into this offseason. They can increase that, though, by making a series of cuts, like Sam Hubbard. Cutting him would save about $9.5 million for the team. You cut Sheldon Rankins, a D-tackle. That would save $8.6 million. Alex Cappa, the guard. Cutting him would save $8 million. Trading or cutting Jermaine Pratt, because he requested a trade, would save them $5.9 million. Cutting Zach Moss, the running back, would save $3.3 million. All those moves combined would save the Bengals $35.3 million and give them one of the highest effective cap spaces in all of the NFL. If you sign Jamar Chase to a record-setting deal, that could include a large signing bonus and consequently a low salary next year, which essentially backloads the contract, making a lot of the money go to the end of the contract, not the beginning. To offset that, you can make T. Higgins and Trey Hendrickson's deals front-loaded, right? You can have a lot of the money at the front end of the contract and not as much on the back end when Jamar Chase's cap hits really start to take effect. The other thing is, too, their star quarterback, who makes $55 million a year, has said publicly he is willing to restructure his contract. He's willing to convert the money to a signing bonus or push money to the back end of his deal to lower the cap hit. So you have a quarterback who is willing to restructure his own contract to make sure the Bengals are able to keep Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Trey Hendrickson. So it'd be wise for the front office to try to make the guy who is an MVP candidate and one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, it'd be wise to keep him happy. Also, another thing is, T. Higgins parted with his agent. He fired his agent, David Mulugeta, and he's now represented by Rocky Arsenault. Why is that important? Rocky Arsenault is also Jamar Chase's agent as well. The Bengals, in negotiating those two contracts, those two wide receivers, would be working with one agent on both of those deals. So that might make it a little bit easier for the Cincinnati Bengals to work out a deal to make sure both of them stay in Cincinnati. If Higgins walks, wide receiver is all of a sudden a massive need, if not the biggest need, going into the NFL draft, because Andre Yoshivas would be the team's number 2 receiver. He was 126th in PFF grade this past year. They selected Jermaine Burton in the 3rd round of last year's draft, but a lot of issues with Jermaine Burton. He's probably not going to be the number 2 receiver long-term for the Bengals like they hoped for when they took him in the 3rd round. T. Higgins is a top 15 receiver in the NFL. Those do not grow on trees. Having multiple weapons that scare a defense is not just a luxury in today's NFL, it's a necessity. Now, there are risks with signing T. Higgins to a long-term deal, right? He's had some injury history in his past. He's missed 5 games in each of the last 2 years due to injuries, but you have to take that risk if you're Cincinnati. Joe Burrow is coming off the best season of his career. You cannot make his life harder by removing T. Higgins from that equation. The Bengals' entire goal right now should be to maximize their Super Bowl window with one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL after coming up just short a few years ago. That means they got to fix their defense and their offensive line while maintaining what they have at wide receiver. They have good enough receivers to make a run and maybe win a Super Bowl, right? Jamar Chase was maybe the best receiver in the NFL this past year. T. Higgins, like I said, is a top 15 receiver in the NFL. Obviously, you could add a little bit more at tight end and maybe your number 3 receiver, but you have those two right there. It's a really, really damn good duo. If T. Higgins walks, it'd be hard for them to not draft a receiver at number 17 overall, which again means you'd be pushing back your defensive needs to day 2. And also, if you're taking a receiver at number 17 overall, you're hoping he's as good as T. Higgins, right? You already have a guy you know is a bona fide star in the NFL. If he walks, you're going to have to draft a guy that you hope can replace that production, and hope is not necessarily a guarantee like it is with T. Higgins. And you're missing out on some top-end defensive players that could really help out a struggling defense like James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher from Tennessee, Mike Green, the edge rusher from Marshall, or a couple D tackles like Kenneth Graham from Michigan or Walter Nolan from Ole Miss as well. So it's going to take some maneuvering, right? The Bengals have 3 high-profile players. They're going to have to spend at least $25 million a year each on this offseason, but they have a quarterback willing to restructure his deal. They have a good amount of cap space to play with as well. I think it's possible the Bengals could bring back T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Trey Hendrickson, but it's going to be interesting to see how they maneuver all of that to make sure all 3 of them stay in Cincinnati.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.